Welcome everyone and thank you for joining us. As you may already know, my name is Lesedi Monamodi and I'm a member of the Steering Committee for Women in Sectional Title. Today I'll be talking to Juliette Jenner from Dynamic Voice Company, who will be sharing her thoughts on the power of one's voice and some of her tips on how to use your voice effectively, particularly during these unprecedented times. Juliette is a master practitioner in neurolinguistic programming and the co-founder of Dynamic Voice Company, which was established in 2002. She specializes in bespoke coaching solutions to increase personal presence and impact. Juliette is a sought-after strategic facilitator, body language expert, and professional keynote speaker, and through the Dynamic Voice Company and their online coaching programs and webinars, has coached in major South African and international corporates as part of their core young talent, leadership, and women's development strategies, specializing in helping people master public speaking in conversations, negotiations with excellence. Welcome, Juliette, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Hi, Lesedi. Such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. I briefly touched on some of the amazing things you and Dynamic Voice are doing, and I'm blown away by the vastness of it all. You even have a history in acting and with experience in using theater for environmental awareness. For many people, public speaking does not come naturally. So could you share with us, particularly from your perspective as a behavior change coach, what advice would you give someone who struggles with public speaking?
So it's an interesting thing because we all speak all the time, don't we? We just take it for granted. And yet the moment we put a spotlight on it, we put pressure on it, something shifts in our headspace. And I think this has got a lot to do with the fact that from when we were really little, we've always wanted to get things right. You know, at school, if you get the answer right, you put up your hand, you get the answer right, then you're a good girl, then you're a successful person. And actually, being a good speaker, being a compelling speaker is about being authentic. It's about being clear. It's about being generous and focused on how you best want to serve your audience. It's not actually about you at all. So one of the biggest tips for people who struggle with speaking or public speaking is focus on your audience. Look at them, serve them. Think about the gifts you want to give them with your information, how you want to support or help them make their world better. And when you turn the attention away from yourself onto them, you will notice it gets much easier. The moment it's all about other people looking at me, then you feel awkward and strange. What I do with my hands, probably a top asked question. What I do with my hands. Actually, you know what to do with your hands. You know how to be a human being. You know how to be compelling because you are compelling all the time. And when you are focusing on your audience, not on yourself, it is probably one of the top little tips I can give you. You will find things flow a lot better.
That's incredible. And I find that quite liberating to remove yourself from the situation so that you're not in your head so much as you described. You're interacting with people on a human-to-human level. I find that very helpful. But considering where we find ourselves right now, the global pandemic has created a new normal and online meetings and interviews like this one are becoming the norm. Do you have any tips for the efficient running of meetings on online platforms? Any common mistakes you've noticed?
Oh, yeah. So it's quite interesting because in the last year, our mostly in-person business has become almost exclusively online. So in that shift, and as an actor, the difference is stage acting versus screen acting. So it was quite a seamless transition for us to take our clients into screen meetings as opposed to room meetings. And I can share with you the top 3 focus areas. If you get these 3 things right, you will have much greater impact, be much more compelling, and build better and stronger relationships with your clients or your colleagues, whoever you're engaging with. And essentially, it starts with this simple idea that we are in a room with each other. We are held by the room. That sort of frames the relationship. online, there's no room holding us, right? So we have a couple of challenges. The first one is the moment we're looking at a screen, we've got very low emotional engagement. So getting and holding people's attention is much harder. The second thing is the camera magnifies everything. So if you look at me now and I, were to rub my nose, it would be a screamingly loud thing. But if I was in a room and I rubbed my nose, you wouldn't probably notice, right? So how do I make that transition to look natural, to have a great professional brand, to look comfortable and have impact, personal impact? How do I connect and how do I land a clear message? Those are the three things you need to focus on. So if I were to give you a quick step-by-step process, I would say step one is get your virtual present smart, beautiful, well curated. So make sure that your camera is eyeline and then look. If you want to know where to look into the camera, because the camera has replaced your audience's eye. So the moment you're looking down on the screen, you're no longer making eye contact with your audience. So step one is look into the camera and make eye contact with your audience. And that requires a bit of imagination, right? Because I can see you, Lesedi, in the screen, and I want to see you, but I know that if I'm speaking directly to you, I've got to look back into the camera. So I'm sitting a little bit further back so that I can seamlessly look at you and the camera without looking clunky, Step two is be careful of how you set it up. So I'm going to demonstrate because it's the easiest way to show you. You do not want to be too close because that's just way too intimate. Like I only want to get close to my nearest and dearest. I don't want to get close to a client like this, right? Make sure that your camera is not going up your nose and that you're looking down like that, because that makes you look like an amateur. By the same token, you don't want, this is another classic one, people like this. You want good lighting. So you don't want to be sitting in front of a window and you become a silhouette, or you have light coming on one side and you're completely in darkness. Then you look like film noir. You want to look well lit. So get a desk lamp onto your desk to compensate. Turn your desk to face a natural source of light. So you've got good light coming onto you. Sit back so that you can use body language and keep eye contact. Look at your background. You don't want your bedroom. Not everybody has the luxury. I mean, you've got a lovely background behind you. And that's not a virtual background, right? That's a real background. Yeah. So it's lovely. It's interesting. It's professional. It sort of melds into it. It's not too busy and cluttered, despite the fact that they're books. But if you have a background that is messy and cluttered, or has a door behind you that's half open, those backgrounds start to tell a competing story with you. So to have a professional presence, make sure your background works for your brand. Sometimes you might even have to put a screen up. Make sure you're well lit, dress the part, make good eye contact. And a slightly contentious one for some people is put a bit more makeup on than you would. So women, we have an advantage here, because often the camera will wash you out and you want your features to pop on screen. Remember, you're competing with Netflix here. They've got great scripts, gorgeous actors, amazing, stunts, incredible camera angles, beautiful clothing, fast-paced. You've got to be as compelling while still being real. And the beauty of that is when you are comfortable and real, you are compelling. So set it up that you look good, that your eyeline is good, that your body language is available. And then vocally, in terms of finding your voice on camera, try and slow down a bit. You don't have to be formal. You can be casual, but slow down. Put energy into your speech. Now, a lot of people are actually doing meetings without their cameras on. And that's fine. You will have a lot less energy output if you don't have your camera on, right? Because now they can't see you. But it's also much harder to hold your audience. People will start doing emails and answering calls and messages because you can't see them. So what happens is you shift from being a participator into being a spectator if your camera's off. So know that if your camera's on, you will have more impact, you will be more compelling, and you're more likely to hold people's attention. And that's very important if you are dealing with someone you don't have a strong, trusting, established relationship with. Put your camera on for new people, for client meetings. If you're dealing with a colleague that you know really well, you can turn your camera off and have a quick chat.
Yeah.
But if you want to have personal impact, put your camera on. Of course, that's going to be exhausting. Don't expect that you can be in hour-long meetings all day with your camera on, because you're going to lose impact. So decide, is this a camera meeting? And then let everybody know and invite it to be, bearing on, they're also bandwidth challenges for some people. But try and have your camera on when you want to land a strong point or have great impact. So that's the first step. The second step is, this is a virtual relationship and there's no room holding us. So you have got to make the relationship explicit, because there's not all that little small talk, let's share a coffee, where you're going to sit, or lovely to see you, that sort of ease that happens when we're in the room with each other. So what you've got to do is express your appreciation. Thanks for your time. Great point, Lesedi. I really enjoyed the way you said that. Wow, that's really made me think. Even if you don't agree with what people are saying, acknowledge them and put energy into the relationship. Ask them questions, show interest, show up to the relationship. Online is still a human gathering. Just like you have people around to a braai, you're not going to ignore them and talk over them or just dump information on them. You're going to welcome them. You're going to acknowledge them. You're going to acknowledge the relationship. And it's crucial online to put energy into the relationship. Yeah? And I mean, is that not a theme? Are we not all longing to get back into the room with each other simply for the connection? Yeah.
It's very true.
Even though we're loving this beautiful, efficient way of working, this remote way of working is not going to go away. I don't think it's going to go away. And I think it's going to give rise to a whole new way of being. It makes us so agile. There's no commute time. But what it has cut back on is connection.
Yeah. And that's, like you've mentioned, that's something that we're all longing for. We're missing that. But you've helped to bridge that gap, to give us tools that could maybe reestablish that in a new way, which I appreciate.
Good. So the third tip that I would give you, and we coach in corporates, as I said, all over South Africa, into Africa and internationally. And there's a massive trend of people trying to do what they did in the room simply online. So we're still booking hour-long meetings. We are still trying to have long information dump sessions. Online doesn't work that way. It's quite exhausting. So if you want to avoid the Zoom fatigue and the meeting fatigue, a couple of things need to happen. So here's some tips for making your meetings more effective. The first thing I'm noticing is, think about the different channels of disseminating information. And you almost want to deconstruct your meeting and go, could some of this information be sent in a report or a document? Maybe I'm going to send a slide with a quick voiceover. Maybe it's going to be a slide doc. Maybe I'm even going to make a quick video and say, guys, quickly watch this video to cue you into this meeting, right? We've got to get innovative here, guys. We've got these amazing technological channels that we can use to get our impact and our message across. So that's an idea. But if you are going to have a meeting, be absolutely purposeful. Why are you calling the meeting? Why do you want these people in the meeting? Don't schedule huge meetings where people have to sit as pedestrians. Rather update them with the minutes or the outcome of the meeting. Have people in the meeting you want to have conversation with. So keep your online meetings not for big information dumps, but for discussion, decision-making, conversation. Essentially, you want to ask, do we need an online meeting, or could we do this via email or a different channel? No, we need a meeting. Do we need the meeting to have camera on? Yes, we want to build relationship. This is complex. We want to see each other. Great. I want to have impact. I'm going to have cameras on. Then tell people. Third, meet the expectation of, this is why I want you in the meeting. This is the clarity of the meeting. Then be very sure that you have answered, what do you want the people to get out of the meeting? How do you want this meeting to be useful to them? What do you need? And what can you offer them? And lead with the why. Lead with why this meeting is useful and impactful, what the outcome is, what is the expectation you have for the meeting. Because let me tell you, online meetings are a nightmare when they're waffly. No one knows why they're there. They're directionless. They get derailed by dominant personalities. Perhaps you even haven't really thought it through. So prepare, answer, why do I want the meeting? What do we want to cover? What's the outcome we want? Be succinct and purposeful, make a strong point, and don't waffle with information. And if you follow those guidelines of a strong virtual setup, so make sure your framing is good, you're well lit, you're looking into your camera, you focus on putting energy into the relationship, not just into transactional business information, and you are purposeful and succinct with your information transfer so that you can have meaningful conversations, you will find that this is an extraordinary way of doing business and you can have great success with it.
So I'm hearing you say there's a shift that is necessary, and you're challenging people to be more prepared and to think a lot about what needs to be achieved and needs to be done leading up to what you're going to be doing or having in your meeting. So there's a lot of prep work required and thought required.
I would say there's more than we used to often do in the room. You know, sometimes you could get in the room, you'd have an hour, you'd have coffee, you could have small talk, and you could, you know, stumble your way through the meeting. It still irritated people often, but there was a much more tolerance for that. We can't do that online all day. We don't have energy. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that people are finding in the professional space is that already we have the dissolving of boundaries between home life and work life. There's an expectation that I'm available 24/7. So that's already exhausting us because we never rest with our back to the work. We never can go home. We're at home. Yeah. So that's hard. The second thing is that we're not succinct and purposeful with our information. So our meetings aren't as productive as they could be. I'm a huge fan of the 15-minute meeting. I schedule them all the time. Quick check-ins. So look at ways of using the online meeting to have meaningful, punchy conversations that build relationships, solve problems, get something done, and don't use online meetings to share huge amount of information and waffle like you could do in the room. Make them much more succinct.
Yeah, I love that idea. And I think that will change the way people are thinking and approaching these meetings, because oftentimes, and I've realized with myself, you're so used to wanting to relay certain information, and you do that in the environment of a meeting, whereas it may be more appropriate to communicate initially via email, and then, like you've suggested, have a discussion about it in this meeting, which would reduce the time spent in these Zoom meetings and everything along those lines.
Yeah. I mean, even some clients I recommend schedule an hour with them. For the first half an hour, they get to go over the info pack, and the second half an hour, you then discuss it. So you actually create a space where you ensure they have the time and the focus to go over the information, because people are worried that other people won't read. And I think when you're in back-to-back meetings, you don't prepare, you don't read. And that really is a lost opportunity. You know, people enormously appreciate if you save them energy. Right now, this is an energy game. Yeah. It's an energy game. Being on camera takes energy. Preparing takes energy. Thinking through stuff, making decisions takes energy. And we can't squander our energy or other people's energy. So if you make it easy for people to navigate your information, don't present slides where they have to read the slides and listen to you talking. You know, that's a classic mistake. That's an old style thing. You know, the moment my brain has to read information, it uses a different part of the brain to the part that listens. And I can't swap very well between them. And the part that reads trumps the part that listens, right? So if I'm reading, I don't want you talking over me. Rather, give me an info pack to quickly peruse in the first half an hour of the meeting. And then let's have the conversation in the second half. Then take me through document slides. So there are ways to play with it. You got to get smart with being interesting, telling compelling stories, structuring your information in a compelling way that leads with the value. Why should you listen to me needs to be absolutely upfront. You know, you have to lead with that. Why should you listen to me? This is how this information is going to serve you. This is what you're going to be enabled with. You know, right from the get-go, you've got to lead with your value and be quite assertive with that. And then have the conversation, invite participation, ask questions, engage. I mean, I don't know, do you relate to this? Are you finding this in your work, that you're encountering meetings like this?
Yes, definitely. Definitely. And it's been a very interesting challenge to try and overcome and think of practical ways of making sure clients are up to date and understanding what we were trying to do and achieve with each of their matters. I'm an attorney, so, having to deal with legal jargon and explain it in these settings it's been helpful, because you don't want to relay that kind of information in emails and people are left not understanding it. But there have been other challenges that have arisen, with this kind of format. So it has been a very interesting time.
Absolutely. And I think that if you understand what your audience most needs from you, and sometimes you just got to be explicit and ask them, like, what would be most useful for you in this meeting? What would you most like to understand? How can I serve you the best? Is a great thing to do. Is just ask if you're not sure. Or if you feel like you're losing them, stop and ask. Like, Lesedi, where do you want to go now? What would help you? What do you want to give your listeners now?
Yeah.
That's what you do, you'd stop and ask.
Yeah. So it's almost like, I think the approach to these meetings shouldn't be as formal as we've assumed it should be. Almost, it should be more conversational and more interactive. I think the intention of these platforms was for that kind of interactive nature, but in the way that we're used to formulating meetings, we've kind of tried to adapt the old formula to this new platform, and that's where the issues are arising.
Yeah, and we don't have energy for formal online. We have energy for power, for impact, for showing up, for connection, for purposefulness. So we mustn't see casual as wishy-washy or unfocused. And we also mustn't see, informal and casual as low impact, but rather it's very, very human. So be authentic, be human, be real, and really get to the nub of, how do we come out of this meeting and we've advanced the project, or we've increased our understanding? What is the outcome we collectively want? Because the more we can tune into that, the more we can be productive together. And sometimes you can't assume, right? Sometimes you actually have to ask. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you something else, because at WiST, we seek not only to be a part of a movement that encourages collaborations between women, but also facilitates their empowerment by sharing knowledge and experience across professions, with a central focus on women in sectional title. From your perspective, what's one indispensable tip you would give a young female who's currently trying to find her voice in a male-dominated world?
Well, the beauty of it is that I think online equalizes things a lot more than in the room used to, because we are often speaking into male-dominated rules of engagement. So we want men to show up and be powerful and assertive and capable, but we also know the legal profession is dominated by male rules of engagement. So I think one of the things is, when we are feeling like we are a minority in the room, we mustn't see that as an obstacle. That is our actual strength. If you realize that the more diverse voices in the room make the room stronger, then you recognize, well, it's fantastic that I'm not just bringing another male perspective. It's fantastic that I'm bringing a female voice into this room, because this room really needs a female voice. So I think often women feel like they have to play to male strengths. And I'm generalizing, please. I'm generalizing here. I think you need to work out what your strengths are and bring them generously. Bring them generously, and not in competition with other people, but, go, wow, it's so wonderful to be in this room of strong men. I'm so privileged to be able to bring my strong self into this room and meet your strength. So as long as we feel like who we are is an obstacle, it will be an obstacle. Why is being young a source of great strength? Why is your young perspective so valuable in the room? Why should you own it and claim it and speak from that perspective with courage? That's what you have to answer for yourself. Why are all the things I can't change about myself a source of power? as long as you don't think they're a source of power, as long as you go, oh, I'm young and inexperienced, therefore I'm less powerful, boom, you gave your power away. Yeah. So we always use the metaphor that you are a bowl, and put all your power sources, your strengths into your bowl and bring it with generosity and abundance. If you show up with lack, my bowl is empty. Oh, I'm young, so I can't put that in my bowl. Oh, I'm female and they're all male, I can't put that in the bowl. Or maybe, I'm not a first language English speaker, whatever it is, and you don't put it in your bowl, then you show up with lack. Put who you are, your strengths, and everything about you that you can't change is a potential strength if you choose it to be. Put it in your bowl and bring it generously. And if you're met with opposition, get curious and go, I'm so interested that you don't think a youthful perspective is relevant here, because I think I'm bringing a really fresh take on things. And I think that's necessary in a changing, changeful world. Get curious when you're met with opposition. Like, that's so interesting that, you're feeling like this isn't a strength. Well, I see this as a strength. Let me explain to you why. Yeah, as opposed to thinking you have to fight everybody for space.
That's incredibly empowering words and powerful. I really appreciate that. For people that are watching this and are amazed and want to contact you and learn more about how you can help them, what's the best way for them to get into contact with you?
Go to our website, www.dynamicvoice.coza, and you can get everything there. And we offer all sorts of interesting ways of engaging with our work. And this year we're building a membership platform where you can have access to regular online interventions and support. So whether you're an early career starter, or whether you're already in a leadership position, we meet all the layers of business, because we're about human connection, personal mastery and impact, and how can we be better together? How can we be profitable, successful, more engaged together? So any of those themes you can find on our website, and get in touch with us that way.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Juliette. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm honored to have spoken to you. Thank you for your time. And to anyone listening and watching, you've heard how to get into contact with Juliette. And until next time, thank you.
Thanks, Lesedi. Such a pleasure to be interviewed by you, and such a pleasure to meet you and engage. And to all your viewers, lovely to be here.
Thank you so much.